Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's been a little while, but here we are. So today I would like to talk to you about what I use to heat my van and why I chose that specific item. And before we get into kind of showing you what I use, I thought I would show you a couple of alternatives and the cons of why I chose not to use those to heat my van. So stick around and you'll see what we use to heat my van. So the first option that I was going to go with is a small electric space heater. So using these small electric space heaters in my van can be a convenient option. There were some potential drawbacks and considerations to keep in mind. Number one is the power consumption. These little electric heaters can be pretty power hungry. So using them for any extended period of time, they're going to drain your batteries pretty quick. And that could be a significant concern, especially if you're relying on the heater for overnight or during periods when the van's engine's not running. So if you don't have a way to charge your batteries, this thing's going to suck them dry. The second is the limiting heating capacity. So these little small electric space heaters, they just might struggle to adequately heat these larger spaces like my van, especially in extremely cold conditions. The insulation and size of your van can make it challenging for the heater to maintain a comfortable temperature. So, keep that in mind. Number three is the dependency on external power sources. So to use like this electric space heater, you'll need access to an external power source, such as a shore power at a campground or a portable generator if you have those. And that dependency might limit your ability to stay warm, especially in remote or off-grid locations, unless you have alternative power solutions to keep this thing running. Number four is obviously safety concerns. So while these modern electric space heaters are generally safe, there's always a risk of fires, especially if not used properly. And that risk is particularly relevant in a confined space like a van, where flammable materials are pretty close to the heater. So if the heater overheats, that will pose a significant safety hazard. And number five is space limitations. These small electric space heaters, they may take up some valuable space in your van, so keep that in mind. Especially in a compact living area, finding these suitable locations for the heater so that it doesn't interfere with your daily activities coming in and out of the van or compromise safety. These things can be challenging. So before relying on a small electric space heater, you want to carefully assess your power supply options and consider the size and insulation of your van and prioritize safety measures. It's also essential to have a backup heating plan for situations where an electric heater just might not be practical or sufficient. My second option was the Mr. Buddy heater. So while using a Mr. Buddy heater in your van can provide portable and efficient heating, there are some potential drawbacks and safety concerns to consider with these as well. The first being ventilation. The Mr. Buddy heater requires proper ventilation to prevent the buildup of carbon monoxide. So in a confined space, like a van, adequate ventilation might be a little bit challenging. Inadequate ventilation can lead to a dangerous accumulation of carbon monoxide. The second being moisture. These propane heaters release moisture as a byproduct of their combustion. So in a closed space like a van, this moisture can accumulate over time, leading to issues such as condensation and potential mold growth. So proper ventilation is crucial to mitigate those problems. Number three is obviously fire hazard. While the Mr. Buddy heater has safety features, any heating appliance poses a potential fire hazard. So in a small and enclosed space like a van, the risk of fire is really heightened. And it's essential to follow all the safety instructions, keep flammable materials away from this heater, and use additional safety measures. You want to keep this thing out of reach. The fourth being propane storage and handling. Relying on propane as a primary source of heat means that you need to carry and store propane canisters. So this introduces additional safety concerns as, propane is flammable and requires careful handling. And running out of propane in the middle of a cold night can also be really inconvenient. And the last is, the limited heating capacity. And while the Mr. Buddy heaters are efficient for personal heating in small spaces, these things are going to struggle to adequately heat larger areas like the living space in your van. So depending on the size of your van and insulation, you might find it a little challenging to maintain a consistent and comfortable temperature throughout with the Mr. Buddy heater. So it's always crucial to prioritize safety when using any heating device in a confined space like your van. And you want to regularly inspect your heater, follow all safety guidelines, and consider alternative heating options if these cons outweigh the benefits for your specific situation. So my third option, obviously you can't bypass the old Chinese diesel heaters. And while these heaters can be cost effective and efficient for heating your van, there are also some potential drawbacks and cons to consider with these as well. Number one is quality concerns. Some of these Chinese diesel heaters, they may have inconsistent build qualities, durability issues, such as component failures. The glow plugs just fail on these things all the time. They malfunction, and they lead to a potential safety hazard, or obviously the need for frequent repairs. Number two is noise level. These Chinese diesel heaters can be relatively noisy during operation. Noise might be a concern if you plan to use the heater in close proximity to your sleeping area. Potentially, this is going to disturb you in the middle of the night. So if you're one of those who like no sound, this might not be your option. Number three is the installation. The installation process for Chinese diesel heaters might be a little more complicated compared to other heating options. So if you're not familiar with the installation of these heaters, it could be a little bit challenging and time consuming. And remember, poor installation may also result in some safety issues. Number four is the lack of customer support. Some Chinese diesel heater brands may not offer these robust customer support, or they have limited availability of replacement parts. So that can be problematic, especially if you encounter issues with the heater and you need assistance or replacement parts like right away. And the fifth being safety concerns. Now, there have been reports of safety concerns related to Chinese diesel heaters, including issues with like overheating, fuel leaks, improper combustion. It's crucial to follow safety guidelines and perform regular maintenance to minimize those risks. But the overall safety standards may not be as stringent as those of more established brands. You got the Webasto and such. So before deciding on a Chinese diesel heater for your van, it's advisable to thoroughly research the specific model you're interested in. Read user reviews and consider the long-term reliability and safety implications. So additionally, always follow proper installation and maintenance procedures to ensure safe and efficient operation if you're going to go with the Chinese diesel heater. So those were some of the options that I kind of turned down. I do use the space heater, like I said, during the wintertime. I keep it in my van. I want to make sure that the van stays fairly above, at least above freezing temperatures. I don't need my lithium batteries to be dying out on me. Two was the Mr. Buddy heater. As soon as I brought that into the van, there is no way that I'm going to fire that up in here. One, I might have adequate ventilation, but that just sucks all the heat out. So there goes the whole purpose of the Mr. Buddy. Besides, it's a radiant heater. It doesn't have good airflow or anything like that. And the third option, which I did purchase, I was planning on installing in the van, was the Chinese diesel heater. But my issues were, one, location. Where am I going to install this? And two, it's a diesel heater. My van is gas, which means I would have to carry an additional fuel source on board, which I didn't want to do. I have nowhere to I mean, look at this size of this tank. I have nowhere to install this where it wouldn't be in the way, or I'd potentially spill diesel. My whole van would stink. And yeah, so that was a big turnoff for me. Plus, all the reviews I've seen with people having issues, these things breaking down on them right at the moment that they need them. So I didn't want that issue, which now brings us to what I did purchase. So I purchased the Propex HS2000. So I did have a perfect location for this propane heater, which happened to be right in between the two bench seats. And so I installed it down here. So let's take this off. I have my cushion setting on that. I have a false floor here, and my propane heater is installed in this area. It was a great location, out of the way. I'm still able to use my bench seat, and with my lagoon table set up, I'm still able to put my feet here. And then, on those occasions where I got my cushion down here, I can sit down there and be very comfortable. So, yeah, this worked out to be the best place. And the Propex heater comes with a template. So it's turned this way for a reason. I would have liked to have it going fore and aft like this because I have an exit, an exhaust, and an intake. But the location under the van, due to the cross members, I've got a bracket in the way. I'm so close to another cross member. I just did not have the area to turn this thing sideways without moving it forward. And then for my exhaust, it would have butt right up against my cabinet. So turning it sideways, I had just enough space underneath to put my exhaust in my intake, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. And also my fuel line here, my propane. The intake is here in the back, so I have a fitting for that. Run my, it took a, what did I use? Man, that's got to be a good 16 foot. So I've got my fuel line that runs through there, runs through the bench. It runs up and under the bed, comes into my cabinet here, and I have my propane tank sitting in the back. So I decided to go with propane because that is exactly what my oven and stove uses. So I already had a fuel source, and now I've got 2 tanks in here that I can switch back and forth as needed. And I got to tell you, I'm very happy with this propane heater. It's very quiet and thermostat controlled, and hardly any issues. Noise level is extremely low, and it uses very little power. So why don't we go ahead and get this thing fired up, and I can show you how well it works. So currently outside it's 51 degrees, inside is 65 degrees. It was 67 degrees in here before I turned off the little electric space heater. It dropped a couple of degrees. The van stays pretty warm, so when I turn on this propane heater, it kicks on, reaches temperature, and then shuts down, and it cycles on and off. I mean, yeah, it's very nice. All right, so it does come with a digital thermostat, and to turn the unit on, there's a little flame here that will press and hold. A green light will show up, and once the heater starts, then our red light will light up to let you know that it is running. Out of the box, when I first installed everything, turned it on, red light was flashing. So there's a little reset here that I had to use a needle and just press twice, very gently, and everything started working. So let's kick this on. It'll go through a cycle as far as the unit will power on, and then it'll blow, and then once the heat kicks on, it'll start throwing out some heat. So let's take a look. So currently it blows kind of a high-speed air until we get that little red light, and then it'll kick down. Thermostat says 67. We have it set at 72. So once that fires up, and we have heat. So it's 68 degrees, temperature set at 72, and it is 245. Oh, I hear that heat just kick up. Yes, we have nice warm air coming out of there already. Nice and quiet, so if we lift up the cushion here, yep. So this is our air intake. All right, so with these units, these are basically a heat exchanger. Means there's no open flames. So one, you get nice, clean, warm air, and you don't get any of the condensation. You don't get any of the carbon monoxide, yada yada yada. Although I will install a carbon monoxide detector, and I have yet to get my propane detector in here. So those are a couple of safety features that I will add. So while this is running, why don't we go outside, take a look underneath. You can see where the exhaust and the intake, and just what this thing sounds like on the outside. So coming out here, it does have warm air. Nice. So let's see where we are installed under here. So this is where my unit comes out, and we have the fresh air intake here. We have the exhaust here, and now you see why I had to turn it sideways. I didn't have enough room back here if I spun the unit sideways, and this bracket was in the way, so I wasn't going to move it back any farther, so I just didn't have the room. So it is where it is. All right, so we're back in the van, and we have gone about 3.5 minutes, and we've already jumped up to 70 degrees. So under, I'm going to say 10 minutes, this will reach 72 degrees and shut itself off. And then when it reaches about 68 degrees, it'll cycle back on. And it'll do that and keep this van so cozy. So like I said, you know, about third week of October, which by the way, the second or third week of October is like the pristine time if you want to go to Yellowstone National Park. There was hardly any crowds there. I mean, there was absolutely not a crowd. Getting in, we went onto the west side, and entering, we were always like the first or second car in line, so no line whatsoever. So I took my buddy Jack with me, and we spent about 4 days at Yellowstone, and like I said, the nights got real cold. I think that first or second night dropped down to 26 degrees, and this little propane heater was just an absolute dream. So we kicked that on. It was a set it and forget it thermostat, and that is one of the things I love about this. I will go over some pros and cons of the HS2000 here in a minute, but I want to see, we're almost at 72 degrees, and it's been a little over 5 minutes and we're at 71. So once we hit that 72 and the propane heater kicks off, then we'll discuss some of that. And if you stick around to the end of the video, maybe I'll throw in some scenes that we took while we were over at Yellowstone, and maybe you can enjoy some of that. All right, so we're almost there. Give it just a few more seconds. And just to show you, currently we're drawing about 85 watts. I have all of the lights on in here, and that generally, well, that I think reaches about 5 amps. So this little propane heater draws very little power from a 12-volt system. So I'm pretty happy with that, and yes, I'm loving it. All right, as you can see, we have reached 72 degrees, and it has been about 8 minutes. So it didn't take very long for it to go from 67 to 72, and it will maintain that temperature as long as I have propane in the tanks. So with that little 5-pound bottle, I have been running on, this would be the 5th day in a row if we were to run this, and I only run it at night. So when we were at Yellowstone, we drove most of the day, and then when we came back and parked for the night, we kicked the heater on. So we're looking at 7 o'clock until about 8 in the morning, and that lasted for 4 days. Drove back, and I'm still running off of that tank today. So very, very low consumption on the fuel, and it just sips on the electricity, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to let this heater kick off, and then we'll talk about some pros and cons, and maybe show some Yellowstone at the end. Well, I did turn out all the lights just to show you the power consumption. We are about 26 watts, and that's what it's pulling, and it's drawing almost 2 amps. And that's while it is running. Currently, it is still going, and once it kicks off, we'll call that a wrap. All right, so it just reached 73 degrees, and it took us about 11 minutes to go from 67 to 73. Our fire is out, and we're shutting down. So it's going through its little cycle of just continuing to blow that hot air out of there, and that is pretty warm. This is my air intake, so I have it facing that way, so it's pulling in air and exiting here. And to shut this thing down, we just press and hold, and it is now off. So once the propane heater has exited all the hot air, it'll shut itself off and wait until the next time. So let's talk about some of the pros about the Propex HS2000 heater. Number one, obviously, it's efficient heating performance. It can warm this place up very quickly, provides a, absolutely comfortable living space and cold weather conditions. Like I said, it was 26 degrees at Yellowstone, and it was 72 to 74 degrees in my van all night long. 2 is the compact design. I mean, this thing is only about 11 inches long, 6 inches wide, maybe 4 inches high. So it makes a suitable choice for, you know, van conversions. Number 3 is the quiet operation. I like a little white noise during my sleep, so this has the perfect sound. It doesn't sound hollow or tinny or anything, and yeah, that's great. The 4th is obviously the thermostat control. It's one of these, you know, set it, forget it kind of deals, and I just love that option. Number 5, obviously, is low power consumption, and I just showed you that's only pulling about 26 watts, and about 2 amps, less than 2 amps. So, yep, very good low power consumption. And last but not least on the pros is the reliability and durability. These models are built to withstand, you know, the demands of your travels, all the environmental conditions, and I place this in the center of my van, so it's the least area that gets the old rocking. So it's pretty stable, and it's just absolutely dependable. So just keep that in mind with all these advantages. You know, it's just essential to consider your specific needs, your travel habits, and your van layout when you're choosing your heating system. All right, so, you know, we've got a lot of good pros about the Propex, and, you know, I had to dig a little bit to find out some cons about the Propex, and so I jotted some down. Number 1, obviously, is going to be the cost. So the initial cost to purchase this heater is a little more than the Chinese diesel heater, let me tell you that. I think I paid about $150 for that Chinese diesel heater. I paid almost $1,100 for the Propex, but that initial cost is something I could afford, and just, yeah, I'm happy with that. So that initial cost, you know, might be a consideration for those who, you know, they have a budget in mind. Number 2 is the installation. Obviously, you're dealing with something that's similar to a Chinese diesel heater. You got to punch holes in the floor, you're going to run an exhaust, you have an intake, but the complexity comes when you're dealing with propane, your gas lines. So if you're not familiar with installing those, or if you're not comfortable, it's probably a good idea to hire somebody who is knowledgeable and skillful that they can hook these up for you. That also adds to your initial cost. Number 3 is dependence on propane. Obviously, you know, it depends on your location, your travel plans. Access to propane may not be available where you're planning on visiting. So you've got to keep that in mind. Plus, you're bringing on board more propane, which adds weight. So if you plan on going locations where propane isn't readily accessible, you might want to bring extra propane with you. Number 4, there's reports on altitude. So if you're up in higher elevations, they say these don't run as, well, let's say they run a little poorly, which could mean that they're not as efficient and or may not work at all. I haven't yet heard anybody say they haven't worked, just that, you know, they do perform a little different when you're in higher elevations. And the other one is, you know, maintenance requirements. I think every device has some sort of maintenance requirements, so you're going to have to take these off, you're going to have to clean them out, you got to make sure and check for leaks and make sure everything is installed and tightened properly in order for this thing to work continuously and efficiently. So those are the only things that I could come up with as far as cons. I'm very happy with that Propex, and I am, you know, if you were looking for something to heat your living space in your van, that would be your first choice that you should consider. Budget for it, save up for it, and you won't be disappointed by it. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of the diesel heaters. Jack and I installed one in his motorhome, and he had nothing but issues. It would not work. It would work for a day and a half, and then it would throw error codes, and then, you know, smoke like like hot brakes on a train going downhill. So not very good, not very fun. Anyway, that's how I heat my van, and I'm very happy with it. Yeah, I look forward to coming out here and turning this on and just enjoy a comfortable day. And yeah, what a thrill. Anyway, I'll leave you with some footage of my Yellowstone adventure. And before I show you that, I want to say thank you for stopping by. Thank you for watching this lengthy video. And yeah, leave me a comment and say what you think of this Propex. We'll talk to you later. And as always, stay tuned. stop recording. Hey, stop recording.